welcome you to our next webinar, Data Strategy in the World of Multiple AI Innovation, almost every week. This is the second webinar in the series, Building the Data-Driven Company. And this session will be hosted by two industry experts, Piotr Menclewicz and Nooijen. I encourage you to ask a question on the chat during the webinar. We will answer it at the end of the event. And let's start.
Thanks, Claudia.
Yeah, thank you, Claudia. Yeah, so I'm going to start by, actually, that's the second webinar in our series. And during the previous webinar, we discussed modern data platforms, so what they are and how companies can implement them. But the truth is that even if you have the best technology implemented, it doesn't mean that it will directly translate into business value. In order to do this translation, you need to have a plan. And this plan is called a data strategy. And that's the main topic of our discussion today. And the title of this webinar might seem a little bit clickbaity, but that's, but in the current world, that's actually true. We have seen single weeks this year where we saw multiple AI innovations even released or announced in a single week. So the main topic that we're gonna, or the main questions that we're gonna try to answer today is, how do you adjust your data strategy to not stay behind, or even to use these new changes to your benefit to build competitive advantage based on these changes? And to provide you with like satisfying answers, we decided to join the forces. So this series of webinars is hosted by GetInData, and we are a data consulting company. And recently we have joined Xebia group. So that's why today we are able, and I'm very happy of that, to have Nooijen as our co-host. So Nooijen is head of data and AI strategy at Xebia. He's got lots of hands-on experience with data projects. And maybe more importantly, he's a great partner to have such conversations and a person who is very willingly sharing his knowledge. So I'm very happy, Steven, that we can have this event together. Wondering if you would like to say a few words about yourself.
Thank you, Piotr. Thanks for the introduction already. Happy to be here. Within Xebia, I'm leading the data strategy team that we started at Go Data Driven, which is a former brand that we had in the Netherlands before becoming Xebia again. I've been consulted in the field of data and AI since 10 years now. I've seen many different companies. Started as a developer myself in data science, programmed models, but over time took more and more lead roles. At some point, I saw that companies transformed the same way or struggled the same way with data and AI. And I've written those findings in a white paper. And based on the white paper, we got more and more questions on how to mature in organizations with regards to data and AI. So we started a strategy team. I'll talk more about the content of the white paper during this presentation. And at the end, we will also have a link towards it. So this is already a small heads up for the audience.
Yeah, thank you, Steven. Again, very happy to have you here. A few sentences about myself. So I'm a staff data analyst in GetInData. I have experience with actually all kinds of data projects, from the traditional analytics and reporting through data modeling and some data science and machine learning projects. And while working with this broad set of projects, the place where I find the most comfortable in, and I think that Steven's the same for you, it's quite close to the business, so that I try to understand the business problems and come up with ways to solve them with the data.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it's also my sweet spot.
Yeah.
Maybe good to say already, Claudia mentioned it in the chat, but if any people have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will try to answer them during the presentation.
Yeah, exactly. So in order to answer this big question, so how do you adjust your data strategy? We will cover the 4 big ideas today. The first idea is, what AI trends do we see nowadays and how they are different from what came before? Second one is, what is a data strategy and how you can benefit from having a data strategy? Another one, how to build a data strategy. So what's the process for building data strategy that worked like before the breakthroughs that we could see, and also in the current world. And finally, the most exciting part, what are the gains that you can capture from having data strategy? So I'm going to start with some AI trends, and I've prepared few, actually 2 charts for you. So that's the chart that shows how popular was the phrase AI in Google search. So you can see that if you look at the last couple of years, from 2004 up until October 2022, especially since 2015, the interest was growing, but that was quite a steady growth with some spike at the very end. And the max that we could see up until October 2022 is marked with this probably oversized green dot so that you can see it, because what happened later was quite an explosion. So if you rewind and see the latest month, you can see that right now the excitement for AI achieves the all-time high. You can probably see that if you open your Twitter or LinkedIn feed that everyone is talking about AI. People who you do not think, do not consider data experts are now able to not only experiment, but also like not only talk about the AI, but also experiment with the tools by themselves. And I think that, first of all, what was the reason behind such spike? So the fact is that in November last year, ChatGPT was released. And actually, that's not the only innovation that we could see in the recent years, but there are 2 reasons why I think this huge increase of interest is justified. The first reason for that is that the innovations that we could see back then, it's not a kind of faster horse innovation. So it does not allow you to do what you could already do, but better, faster, and so on. It actually allows you to do a completely new things. For example, I've been looking into potential for automating different skills that people have over time. So I've been looking into different kinds of reports that were looking into that since around, I think, 2016. And at that year, McKinsey released a very interesting report on this subject, where they stated that skills that are repeatable and predictable are the most prone to automation. Things like writing were at the very bottom on this list because they were perceived as something that people are good at, like the creativity. And that same trend was visible in all the other reports that I saw over the next years. Quite surprisingly, turns out that the ChatGPT and generative AI actually allows you to write a very decent content in just a second. So the thing that we see that is different from what came before is that new business use cases are unlocked, and not many people actually expected that. Do you, Stephen, agree with that statement?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's funny that because AI has been out there for quite some time, we've been building many machine learning models and even deep learning models, but this new generation of large language model is indeed a whole new ball game.
Yeah. So if we talk about like data entry, data processing, everyone see it coming that these things of activities will be automated. For like creating such content, like very few people could expect that. The other reason for that, I think, is the wide availability of these tools, because it's just a few months after this technology was released, and already today, actually everyone who has connection to the internet can play around with these tools. And I'm not only talking about ChatGPT, but also other tools that build on top large language models and are available either for free and with some small fee. So I believe those 2 reasons make these technologies so exciting to the public. And I think that not only public acknowledges that, I think that executives also see this benefits that they can achieve. And that is reflected in an interesting poll that Gartner has made. So some numbers now, 70% is the number of companies that claim to experiment with generative AI. 45% is the share of companies that decided to increase their budget for AI, and 19% of the companies claim that they have some solutions already in pilot or in production mode. So that means that there are like many companies realize the opportunities ahead, and there are some companies who have not been interested on focus on the data technologies so far. They will have quite a lot to catch up. So maybe that's a good point to have a question to you, Steven. Do you find this number surprising? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I have something to say about each of the numbers, and you'll probably have some ideas about it as well. So maybe let's have a quick chat about it. I think 70% that experiment with generative models. I think that maybe makes sense. I will expect it to be even more in practice, because I almost cannot imagine an organization where nobody will benefit from these new large language models. But I'm not quite sure what the term experiment means in this case. Are they developing language models themselves, or are they incorporating language models into a use case for specific purposes, or are people just using ChatGPT on the OpenAI website? So that will be a big question mark here regarding the poll. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. As I said before, like, because there are so many tools that are available that already use these models under the hood. Even if you use tools like, for example, the recently released Grammarly Go, it uses like generative models under the hood. So if you play around with this, you can claim that you're experimenting with these generative models.
Mm-hmm. Same for maybe developers that are using Copilot or any other generative AI that helps them to write code. Then they are already using generative models as well. Yeah. Then the 45% increased budget for AI, I think to me it sounds a little bit as if people are just woken up because of this trend, and it's a bit crazy, because we of course had this whole big data evolution already for 10 years with machine learning and deep learning, computer vision, natural language processing, all have been out there for quite a bit already, and many organizations have been investing in machine learning, I think, and deep learning. And this new generative models, they don't solve the problems of better decision making, because you still need the facts in a BI a dashboard, for example, to know what the revenue is of your company, or which are the most profitable customers or products. So it's at some point it's a bit worrisome that only now people start investing in it, or more since this new technology is out there. But people are already investing quite a bit let's say now a bit more traditional machine learning and BI. In that sense, I think the awareness is good that more investment is even coming into the sector.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's also the case that sorry, I lost the point. I was trying to reference what you said before, but
yeah, I think it could be, increased budget makes sense if you want to, really get started with large language models for new use cases. Then you need a new budget for those kind of use cases. But maybe companies also, realize more that they need to do something on the ethical side or legal side regarding, or security side, making sure that their data is safe and the way people use these models is safe. So maybe there's also a bit more of an investment in arranging the infrastructure well to do this.
Yeah, actually, that's the point that I wanted to make, that because these technologies look so exciting right now, there's a lot of hype around them, and there's expectation that they will solve all the problems that you have, all the business problems, which is not the case. So for example, right now at GetInData, we are doing some internal research to actually figure out that use cases that large language models are ready to solve as of now, versus the one that is still like the case of the future. Because some use cases that you can read about, they look quite crazy in terms of astonishing in terms of what can be accomplished, but these technologies still have some limitations, and it's not a magic wand that will solve every single problem at this point.
No, indeed. Yeah. And I think the 90% is also interesting, because I would initially say, if I look at our own customer base, that it's quite high. So I would ask people, like, what do you consider to be in production mode? but we do have examples of customers where we also use generative AI in production or are working on it. For example, for a big chemicals firm, we did some protein engineering, trying to develop new proteins for products using generative AI. But also on an e-commerce platform, we're helping to change their product descriptions. If they have the same product description of one of their products on their own website, and they also publish this product on Amazon, then Google will see it as like duplicate content, and then will rate the Amazon product higher. But as an e-commerce company owning the product, you want people to go to your own website. So generative AI can help to alter the product description just a little bit, while remaining true to the content. And then you can publish it on both without cannibalizing on your own website. So we have these kind of cases. And we also see, for example, that this new tool is used a lot in, for example, a travel agency, where it can be used to parse natural language, right? So you might get a lot of people asking for holiday requests. Everybody writes in different email, different content. That's very unstructured type of data. But you can ask a ChatGPT, for example, to structure the text make a summary of it and try to abstract the location, for example, the duration of the holiday, the party size, and then you can have the structured information go into a database to feed your people. That will already save a lot of time in terms of inbound processing of requests. So we see more and more of these use cases across all kinds of industries. So why not 90%? But production, I doubt it a little bit. Do you?
Yeah, actually, I do have the same feelings. I suspect that maybe people who use, for example, some tools that generate images for like branding, or maybe some text models in order to prepare templates for their, I don't know, description emails, that may also be considered that they use these technologies. But based on what we can see right now, I would also say that this seems a little bit high, especially that the ways to fine-tune these models and to deploy these models are very recent developments when it comes to the open source. Like the big companies have been doing this for quite some time, but how to do it in other companies, that is still like very fresh. And also one thing that I could also see, that on the other note, that it might be more accessible than you might expect, because I've seen some of your colleagues who created this Slack solution that is querying, that is helping you to exchange some, actually enrich the conversation that you're having on Slack. And that's one of the good use cases that models are ready to solve right now, actually doing summaries and querying the content that is created in natural language.
Yeah, that's indeed, I think, a use case that will probably benefit every company to use, to make sure that ChatGPT is leveraged as a digital assistant within your organization for all kinds of purposes. You can retrain it on your own Confluence database or your own internal documents, so it knows the context of your organization more specifically. And of course, you can make sure that you use a paid subscription, that your data or your requests are not used for retraining. And hence, you're sure that you are using this tool in a safe way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the way, like the process of distinguishing these use cases that seem realistic for now, that can deliver value today, versus those that are the song of the future, is actually what happens during developing a data strategy. So maybe you could right now talk a little bit about what do you think a data strategy is, and how companies can benefit from having a data strategy developed.
Sure, will do. Yeah, I think a nice bridge to regarding the last question is also that you can expose these tools at the fingertips of people, because well, the slide here says 90% of organizations, they see business opportunity for these kind of tools. Or you see that your competitors might embrace these tools, 45%, and that's where you receive some kind of a competitive risk of data and AI. So you might give these tools to these people, but to make it work at scale is really really hard. And it actually turns out, if you click the animation, that almost 70%, I think, of companies report minimal to no gains of their data and AI initiative so far. So this is a study, I think, of Boston Consulting Group. And we also see it in practice. So it's sometimes really hard to make sure that this data and AI is actually contributing to business value at the end. And that's why so far in the 10 years that I've been a consultant in this data space, the idea was first, okay, let's put in all the data in a data lake, and then the value will come out of itself. We just put everything in the lake, and then we use it later. Then we realized we needed the data scientist to do some translation into insights. So data scientist was coined the sexiest job of the 21st century. But then a couple of years later, McKinsey, I think, said that it's not the data scientist, but it's the analytics translator who's the sexiest job, because he can translate the insights, the technical insights, into actual business value. And now I think we have seen this transition from data lake to analytics translator, but we're still seeing that across the organization, you really need a strategy to drive this in a structured way. So we have all invested in small pockets. You might have multiple initiatives of data and AI across your organization, but you're not structurally improving it across the board. And we get many more also companies asking, for example, how to do their data management and data governance better, because they realize that garbage in is garbage out. And if you want to do more of the data across the organization, you need to manage your data better as well. Do you recognize this with your customers as well?
Yeah, and I must say from one of the points that you have mentioned that I'm quite happy that this analytic translator role was identified. Mm-hmm. Because before it was kind of a gray area, right? You had some analysts, you had some engineers, you had business people, and no one in between. Like there were people who were doing this, like talking to business, and also they were willing to talk to the engineers or maybe develop some technologies by themselves. But I think it's worth to actually mentioning that this kind of role exists and that it's needed, because very often if you do not have a person in the room who understands both worlds a little bit, there is very hard and there is very easy to get some confusion and actually end up with solutions that will not meet your expectations.
Yeah, indeed, I agree. So I think in this 10 years journey that I've witnessed, I've seen companies in the Netherlands, we are based in the Netherlands, struggle with the same kind of concepts over time. And we have identified with them 4 different phases that they go through in their data journey. So this is all documented in the white paper that you can download on the link below. And it's validated with 5 or 6 of our customers. So it's also something that really resonates with the market. And I think, let's say 5 to 6 years ago, many organizations here were still in this initialization phase, right? Like a big data science, we need to do something with it. And in this first phase, it's about showing the value of your first use case and convincing your board that they need to step in and invest in data to make it happen seriously. If you got that additional sponsorship and funding to embark on your data journey, then we have seen many organizations develop into like what we call a continuous experimentation phase. So they've been from one use case, they've been trying 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 use cases, and they slowly see the skill benefits of having one data platform. They're leveraging the same data source for multiple use cases now. They can see how one data scientist can work on multiple use cases. So you're getting to the point that you are establishing best practices and ways of working. That's why this step in phase is mostly a step in the vertical direction, and the vertical axis is what we call the analytical capability. So what do you need to arrange on the technical side to make working with data possible? So data, people, and technology. There's also this other axis, which is called the business adoption axis. So what needs to happen on the business side to make stuff happen? And there we talk about things like executive sponsorship, funding, and how you implement your data and AI products across the organization. So the third phase that we have seen companies going into and that we help companies with is what we call enterprise empowerment. So you have this data lab from continuous experimentation for quite a while now. And now you're seeing that all of the different business departments, they also want to get into data themselves. you have a bottleneck on the data lab, and they cannot wait from the bottleneck anymore. So they start hiring their own scientists and their own engineers. A reference case is, for example, for Royal Dutch Airlines, where I worked myself. They at the time when I was there, they were starting up a data science team for HR, for finance, for cargo, for customer success. So each of these business departments gets their own data team, right? So that's really empowering the entire enterprise. It's not so much a change in the technical direction, because you already have your data stack, you already have ingested multiple sources. So it's more a step in the horizontal direction, because you now need to fund it a different way. It's not funded centrally anymore with the IT budget, but it's funded from the business side. The business is stepping in and actually getting skin in the game, stepping in the driver's seat to make a change happen. So a big change component there. And then the fourth and final step, and this, when we wrote the white paper a couple of years ago, it was still also a little bit of an imaginary step. Not many organizations were there yet, but now we are getting really more and more close to that, is what we call AI democratization. And previously, although data and AI was enabled throughout the enterprise in various business departments, it was still only a handful of people that were actually getting the insights, right? And looking into the dashboards or working with machine learning products. But in the AI democratization phase, we see that like every employee now has access to AI or data tools. Could be dashboards, but could also be a tool like ChatGPT. And that requires a big step in both directions, because you need to enable the tool stack and the data to be of quality and compliance, security, legal-wise, ethical-wise. But also on the business side, you need to upskill people, make them more aware of the risks, make them more literate of how to work with data and AI. So you need to upskill people a lot and think about how you are still going to reap the benefits of all of this innovation happening in your company. So these four steps we see, and I think I will say that at least for the Netherlands, most organizations are more like in step 3 or 4 now. Some lagging companies in step 2 or 1 even, but mostly like a bias towards I think step 3 now. How is your situation for your clients across the world as GetInData?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite funny, because before GetInData joined the Xebia group, we were also working on similar scale. And actually, we could see the similar finding. Like the first, we see a group of companies that is still a little bit lagging behind. So for them, it's a challenge to actually monitor their metrics. The next step is that you see companies that they see their metrics, they have some way to measure their business, to measure their decisions, but that's, the data is often scattered, and you can't really go into the details. So you'll see that something changed, but you are not able to track it down to the actual reason or the lever that caused that. And as you say, the next step would be that first of all, you have this granular visibility into all the factors that impact your metrics, and also you start experimenting. So you start making your decisions in a way that, in a scientifically robust way, you can say whether this decision had positive or negative impact on your business. And then also we have the stage when most people at companies have this analytical skills and access to data. And that's also the pattern that we have seen, that, for example, if you have a company, very often there is a team that is very close to the core business of this company, that is very highly knowledgeable about data. They know how to use it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they deliver the use cases. And once you have such team, over time, the other business units catch up, because this knowledge spreads over the entire organization.
Yeah, that's a typical example, I think, of this, like how a single first data lab kind of team becomes more of a center of excellence in phase 3 and 4 and leads the way for change for the rest of the organization. But I think what's also a good point about your story is that often this most mature team is with the core business of your organization. And that makes sense, because that's where you get the competitive value out, right? It wouldn't make sense to start in a finance or HR department, because that's not the core business of your company. So it's really good to start there first with your initialization phase.
Yeah, exactly. You need to, at the very start, you need to focus on your core business. And once you get their capabilities, it makes sense to scale them over the organization.
Yeah. Yeah, so this model, I described the two dimensions, the vertical and the horizontal axis of analytical capability and business adoption. And each of these has then the drivers. I already mentioned them quickly in the model that we have in the white paper. And if we will go to a company and create a data strategy, and then these drivers is what you will find back in a data strategy. If we do an assessment, okay, how's the company doing? Then for each of these drivers, we have like immature and mature practices, and we can judge, okay, does your company, for example, on the people skills part, rely a lot on external talent, or do you have senior talent in-house with a clear training curriculum and career path and a lot of knowledge sharing? That we will consider more of like a mature practice. And because you might know that yourself as well, but for data professionals like us, salary is not the number one business benefit. I think salary ranks even number 5 in the Netherlands already for 3 or 4 years in a row. People first like to learn, work with nice colleagues, have a purpose, and share knowledge. So you really need to think about that when you're creating a data culture. You cannot just pay a lot. You also need to facilitate these things to grow this talent in your company.
Yeah, that's true. We also see that like people who are really skilled at the data, they have a lot of opportunities that they can choose from. So they are usually attracted to places where they can grow when they have some like meaningful contributions.
Yeah, it's a hard market. War for talent. Yeah. So that's why in a data strategy you would expect something like that in a people strategy. Well, eventually this whole strategy is a document, of course, after you completed it, and in the next part we will talk a little bit more on how you create such a document. But it shouldn't be just a document, right? It should initiate some kind of change, because data and AI can be such game changers across the organization. People also need to adopt to a different way of working, using this technology across all business departments as well. So this document, we see it's often used more as a momentum creator. We do use case ideation workshops with all business departments. People get enthusiastic about data and AI, and they want to start applying this technology in what they do in their line of work. So if you just make a document, put it on the shelf, you're missing the point. You should start executing it right away, of course, and kick off a big communication campaign to enthusiastic people, show use cases that are working, get them on board, assign a clear project lead. So do some marketing around it and make sure that this is really a big thing. Therefore, I also believe that a data strategy can only work if you have like a top level executive sponsorship around this, and they emphasize how important this is for the company to remain competitive.
Yeah. Is there any part of like implementing data strategy or working out data strategy that you find the most challenging?
Well, given that I'm a technician myself as a data scientist, I'm more of this puzzler of the whole technology, of course, of the whole strategy and piecing the work together. I'm a little bit less on the change side afterwards in the communication that's described here. But luckily, we have colleagues that are complementary to me and are a little bit more in this implementation and change leading side. It's a different mindset and skill set, I think, than the analytical skill set that I have myself. So that's to answer your question. Yeah, I think my passion lies a little bit more on the creating the puzzle, and maybe a little bit less on the executing it afterwards. Yeah, personally, but we have people that like to help with it.
Yeah, I also agree that this change management is especially challenging. And actually, at previous company, there was a saying that there is no such thing as over communication.
Yeah.
Because often you have some like kickoff, you have high level people, the C-level, you have business, you have engineers, and everything looks that we are on the same page. But later on, after a while, it turns out that actually there are some maybe questions that we should answer, or we are not 100% aligned. So that's the challenge here.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it really well. And I think this communication part is often overseen, right? Or underestimated. So we, when we do these strategies, we really emphasize it, that it should be picked up. Yeah.
Okay, so now we know what the data strategy is. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about what's the process like? How do you actually build such strategy?
Yeah. Yeah, so far we're talking now, by the way, all the time about the data strategy, but to me it also includes the AI component. So I just want to make that clear to our audience, because data is something you want to use to do analytics, and within analytics we have BI, but we also have AI, which is more on the predictive side of things. Why I'm saying that is because you can organize a lot of your data nice and tidy and see that as your data strategy, but it doesn't lead to value, and that's exactly the problem that we have had for the last couple of years. So what we are doing when we're creating a data and AI strategy or data strategy is that we flip it around. So we don't start with this technical or data people, but we start with the C-level executives and the upper management team to define the organization goals. So what does your organization want to achieve with data and AI, or what does your organization want to achieve, and how can data contribute to it, right? So that's kind of the main question, the why of data for your organization. And we are kind of trying to find out how data savvy are people there. To what extent do you think your company should be data savvy to remain competitive? So it's very much a competitive analysis there. I'm not saying it's a business strategy, so we're picking it up after a business strategy. So sometimes we have consultants like a McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group. They're known for creating a business strategy, and within a business strategy, data is often seen as one of the enablers. But the question, how data should enable the business, is then often left pretty blank. So that's what this black box is with organization goals. And to make it more tangible, we then go to the business teams, which are more on the tactical level. So we do use case ideation workshops with all of the business departments, and we try to get a list of all use cases where data analytics could be used for business success. Can be like recommenders or demand forecasting products, where ChatGPT can be leveraged for what kind of purposes. Really tangible use cases on a tactical level, and those you should prioritize, because there will be quite a long list, and you're looking 3 to 5 years ahead. So which 5 cases do you want to have established in 3 years from now? Well, if you know all of those wishes of the company or the data ambitions from step 1 and 2, then we start looking into data strategy, and basically the first 2 boxes lead to a set of requirements. If you look into the third box, you're gonna look into the asset situation, and you're gonna see if how the asset situation deviates from what you want in the 2 big goals. So you start making a plan and a roadmap there. So data analytics should always support business objectives and follow from it.
Okay. I think that you stated it very well, because like as engineers, we actually often love what we do. We are very excited about technology, and it's sometimes a bit easy to get stuck into some project because some technology is fascinating, or you want to like see how something works in practice. But actually, to deliver the business value, you need both components. Like first, you need to build capabilities like technology, people, data, and so on. But then you also need those business use cases so that they use these enables those capabilities, and they actually deliver the measurable value to the company.
Yep, agree. Making it a bit more concrete, what kind of questions do you answer in all of these boxes, and what do you do? I've put this list here. The organization goals, mostly we do like a North Star workshop, focus on the goal and the scope and leading principles. The analytics priorities, a bit more these use case ideation sessions that we did, identifying business problems and challenges and opportunities. And this last part is about judging the maturity of the company. We could leverage the framework that we explained in the previous section with the 2 dimensions and the 6 drivers, the AI maturity framework to define how mature your company is. And then with the needs of the first 2, we can make this as is gap assessment to make a roadmap going forward. And I think on the next slide, we also show what stakeholders are then involved in this process. So again, you see here these three steps, and yeah, really go top down through the entire company. So we first start with executives, then we talk to all of these business domains with like a middle management on the business side, and then eventually we talk to the IT and data teams. We talk to architects, developers. We also do code and architecture reviews to deep dive into the content and really know if it's quality or not. Not making sure it's not completely self-assessed. So this is like the full approach seen in the company structure of the organization.
Yeah. So we have explained all the steps from basically the point where I want to have a data strategy to actually like how do you align with business strategy, how do you bring the right people, and who do you bring to end up with this plan in order to get the value from your data.
Yeah.
So maybe now it's a good time to talk about some benefits of having data strategy. And here I will very quickly start with something that we have promised in the description of this webinar. So the tools that you can use immediately to boost efficiency of your employees. And here you can take a look of these tools. I will give a quick introduction. Maybe you can say if you have personally used some of them, and we can share some practical experience. So the first one that I will mention, but I will not go very deeply into the details because it's very well covered on the internet, is ChatGPT. So it's very good if you want to create some templates for text content, but it also has more and more new unexpected use cases. Two of them that I have seen is that you can use it, for example, to create synthetic data sets. So that's what I did for one of my pet projects. I just customized the tables that I wanted to see, the columns, what kind of data should be there. And it was able to produce actually very convincing and high quality data set that it was hard to distinguish from the real one. And the second use case that I also saw that was very unexpected was ChatGPT as personal teacher. So someone came up with this idea that you can create as kind of JSON file and you provide some parameters then. And later on, you can interact with ChatGPT as if it was your teacher. So you can say that you want to learn about something and ask it to provide the information in like some level of detail, maybe to add some humor, maybe make it more formal, test your knowledge and so on. So that is actually quite exciting about what's to come. Another tool, GitHub Copilot. So that's the tool that we have already mentioned. You can use it in order to not write all the code by hand, but actually describe what you want to achieve. And what it will do, it will prepare it for you so that you can later on customize it. And the results of GitHub Copilot, from what I could see, what my colleagues have done, are very promising, but you do not have to believe me. Even the brightest in the field, like Andrej Karpathy, who is former director of Tesla and now works for OpenAI, says that he already uses this tool to write 80% of his code. And he actually calls his job not coding anymore, but it's more about prompting and editing. Other tools, if you imagine that your work is text intensive, like for example, sales, where you have lots of communication that you need to write, but every time it should be customized so that you deliver the message. There are plenty of tools like Grammarly Go, Notion AI, and many others that you can use to first create templates for your work, but also make text longer, shorter, change the tone, add some jokes, and so on, in order to make your communication more efficient. And finally, it's not only about text. There are some tools that will help you with doing some graphical work. So Midjourney and DALL-E 2 are two most popular ones. So the way they work is you provide some prompt, you ask it to generate some kind of an image, and then you can see the result, which are quite impressive. But again, you don't need to believe me. And because picture is worth 1,000 words, here you can see some prompt and the output of this prompt. So as you can see, this looks like a graphic that could be taken right away, and use for some marketing campaigns. So wondering, Steven, if you have tried any of these tools and what was your experience with them?
Yeah, I try many, and some are more useful than others. I think this image generation, I don't have like a personal use case for it all the time, but of course I created many funny images of cats when this tool was right there. Do you?
Yeah, I've mostly experimented with text models, and these I found like unexpectedly good.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I was even like kind of uncomfortable that within seconds it can create a content that looks much better than what I can create if I sit like for half an hour on an hour.
Yeah, it's really great indeed for in our strategy work as well. I do think there's a the risk is that as humans we trust this outcome of this tools too much or too easily because it looks so good and it's well written in a very short period of time. I, for example, had one inspiration workshop with an executive board of a company. They're a wholesaler in flowers, so they buy and sell flowers. And I asked ChatGPT why data and AI is relevant for this company. And it answered that data and AI could help them make better decisions on which flowers to grow and sell. So I showed that to this executive board, and at first they were really amazed with the answer, like the conciseness and the accuracy of it. And then after like 1 minute of looking, the CEO noted that the statement said which flowers to grow and sell, but they are not growing any flowers. They're buying flowers, right? Okay. So that's exactly the kind of nuance that can go very wrong if you completely trust on these models. And therefore, I think for a long period of time, we will probably still have some human in the loop in using these models in practice. But of course, the whole process to come up to these statements is speeded up significantly because you can get this first iteration that you can then shoot on rather than that you have to make the first iteration yourself. So it's super powerful technology.
Yeah, I've also seen such cases like if you ask it some ridiculous question, so can you prove why CPU is better for training neural nets than GPU? It will provide you a very convincing answer, which is of course not true entirely, but it looks like if it's rooted in the facts.
Yeah, that's the big danger of this technology, and also emphasizes why you need a strategy around this on how to deal with it and policies and governance before you expose this technology for your entire organization. And people in this chat might know that, for example, trade secrets were leaked by Samsung because of people using these tools, not knowing that the data is sent to other organizations in the background and used for retraining. So you're actually, if you're not paying for it, your data is used for retraining and you're giving away data. So that's a big risk. Also, if you do not do something with data awareness and literacy, then these things might happen to your organization.
Yeah, exactly. So moving on to more, I would say, traditional use cases, because these might be some low-hanging fruits, but very often that's not the only place where you can find value in your company. You can often use more, I would say, traditional approaches. Also, saying traditional about machine learning seems kind of odd, but this like technology develops so fast that sometimes, we can like talk about it this way. So I will show you some of the examples and conclusions from the survey that we did, because a couple of months ago, we have published a data-driven survey. So every company can go to our website and fill in so data-driven survey, and we use it for two things. The first is to actually estimate where the company currently is on the data-driven maturity, looking at 5 dimensions. And because of the way this survey is built, we can also hint some opportunities for growth, because here we use questions that have answers ranked from 1 to 5, from the lowest to the highest maturity. So if you tick that you are on a second level, you can actually look at 3, 4, and 5, and it hints what kind of opportunities you might have ahead. So from doing this survey and looking at the results, we have two conclusions. The first one is that almost every company that we looked into had some data opportunities. So no matter if it was just a very low mature, just starting company, or the company who was using machine learning every day, there were some opportunities ahead. And the other fact that probably is also intuitive to you is that the type of gains that you might see highly depends on your maturity. So you focus on completely different things if you are just getting started, and like other things will be more important as your maturity grows. So maybe before I ask you the question, if you see the similar pattern, I will explain what I mean. So for example, for companies that were early in their journey, we could see that sometimes they invested lots of effort into manual processes, like they were spending lots of time, like ingesting data, cleaning data, partly manually, before they could see the insight, which made them spend a lot of time on maintaining the whole data infrastructure instead of actually solving business problems. So in this case, helping the company to build a modern data platform helps to actually get rid of that time and focus on what's the most important, like solving business problems with data. As some companies grow, what we can see in some organizations is that you have more and more data, and sometimes you get overwhelmed with the amount of data. So different teams, they have different data sets, and it's sometimes hard to actually identify where I can pull this data from, or how this metric is calculated, or why this metric calculated by this team versus the other team, which is supposed to be the same, is actually different. So in such cases, we see that, for example, companies could benefit from implementing some data governance solutions, like data dictionaries and so on. Companies that are more mature, they start realizing that they could automate some decisions. And here machine learning comes into play as one of the best technologies that allows you to do that. So here I'm talking about the classic machine learning, like time series models, recommendations, regression models, and so on. So in this case, for example, we have helped one of our clients to develop from scratch a new model that they can offer as a product for their clients, and that's some potential new revenue stream. And that's not the only benefit of machine learning. There are plenty of them, like it can generate savings, it can improve efficiency, and so on. But that's the kind of use cases that we also see. And finally, companies who go all into the data, they have lots of machine learning problems. They come to the point where they can't actually afford spending lots of effort on deployment of each model. For example, if they stop having like dozens of models, like few models, they start to go into dozens or hundreds. Actually, it matters a lot how efficiently do you deploy them. So here also we cooperated with some financial institutions where providing them with better way to deploy models actually help them to have faster iterations and eventually allow them to improve their core metrics for their business. So these were the kinds of use cases that we often see. Do you recognize similar patterns while working with your clients?
Yeah, and the funny thing is that so far these were always considered like advanced analytics use cases, right? And also, yeah, advanced, so hard to do, and it feels almost old to call these now traditional machine learning use cases in the light of large language machine learning models. But yeah, these are still super relevant, and I think all of these are probably still, and for the coming period, the core of what advanced analytics is and can bring to organizations. And we now have this extra box of large language machine learning model unlocking another type of use case. But these things will be there and will remain there and can also not be solved by large language models. So these use cases will remain applicable. And I think that also answers one of the questions in the chat that I had answered a little bit ago. That person also asked about computer vision models. So that's, I think, a very advanced deep learning model. Right? So in the category of machine learning, close to large language models, but focused towards understanding images and seeing what image detection, and we have many clients where we helped with these kind of models. For example, Schiphol, a big airport in Amsterdam. We are detecting on the videos at all of the gates if an airplane arrives, what's happening with the airplane, right? So is it getting fuel? Is the food changed? Are the toilets cleaned? Are people let go out of the airplane or entering the airplane? And if you do that using cameras and image detection or computer vision, and then you have, of course, a very more accurate and better idea of what's going on at the gates of your airport. Before they relied on people manually entering these things in applications, but they often forget, of course, or they are too late. So this data is not accurate, and that then you can also not provide accurate information to the passengers on what's going on with the airplane and whether if possible delays are happening. So this is a very cool case of deep learning that we help a company with in the Netherlands, and I think there's also a video on YouTube if you're interested. I will say all of these models remain relevant for the future.
Yeah, for sure. So you have plenty of options. So after this session, I think it's clear that in order to distinguish which are like value boosters for you versus which you should wait for the future time, data strategy is a perfect place to have this distinction.
Yeah, and then in particular, if you're really struggling with finding the relevance for your organization, we have a very low key offering of a use case ideation workshop, where just in a half of a day, with 10 to 20 people from your organization, we have a standard format to ideate about use cases across all of this skill, and within only 4 hours. You'll have a list of like 10 ideas, pretty concrete on what you could do with data and analytics. And something like that could help you boost the conversation internally if you need.
Yeah, since we are talking about that, so for companies who actually would like to start and build their own strategy, I think we prepared 2 ideas for where you could start. So maybe you can first talk about the white paper that you have published.
Yeah. So this white paper is on the website. I already referred to it. It describes the journey that I talked about in more detail with all of the different drivers. I think it's good to get some sense about what you need to work on if you want to start formulating a data strategy. So that's one pointer from our side. Another side pointer will be what I just described, is just to do a use case ideation workshop. If you already have traditional machine learning cases and BI cases defined, we also have use case ideation workshops specifically for large language models and this new hype around ChatGPT. So that could be an interesting starting point. What do you have as a trick in your sleeve?
Yeah, so these are 2 great points. The point that we have is that I have described the survey that we are doing in this webinar. So if you want to find out where your company is placed on this whole maturity journey, and very quickly find out what might be some opportunities for you ahead, we encourage you to fill in the data-driven survey that is also actually available on our website. And after you do it, we will reach out to you. We can have a coffee and discuss your current situation and opportunities that you might pursue in the next few months. Cool. So I think that would be it from our side. Maybe a good point in time to ask some questions for the audience if we have any. So we encourage you to write your questions in chat, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Yeah. Already for people leaving, thanks for listening. It was fun to do so. And thanks for inviting me, Piotr and Claudia.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to me as well. Very exciting topics.
Yeah, they are. Curious how it will develop over time. So one question I promised to answer is from Anna. She asked, what is the most difficult part for creating a new data strategy? And I think what I replied already in the chat, but to elaborate on it a little bit more, I said it will be something that's really hard sometimes is to get the required support and sponsorship across the organization. So sometimes you feel a frustration within data professionals or an IT department, because data professionals, they're not getting any further. They're having all kinds of challenges, and it's all going very uncoordinated, and they have this desire for a coordinated approach in a data strategy. But as long as you're not getting the support from a C-level executive that supports it, you will never be able to convince the business to step in and change their behavior accordingly, so that your issues and problems will be resolved in time. So making sure the business sees the benefits of working with data and AI and takes ownership and steps in the driver's seat of this change, sometimes it's the most hard part, I think, of getting traction for a data strategy, and especially going towards the execution phase. This is becoming even more critical. And who wants to execute a data strategy that they didn't work on, right? So you should involve these business people right away when formulating the data strategy. But that requires time of them, investment. They need to participate in workshops. So you need someone in the top believing in it and telling to his or her employees to join this effort of a data strategy. That's sometimes the most hard part to get done.
Yeah. And we, like you mentioned a couple of times, that support of the top part of the organization, but ideally probably both are the most efficient way to go. So to have this top support, but also to build some bottom-up excitement, so that people, they do not feel forced to work on these things, that are actually excited and they are looking forward to the outcomes.
Yeah, my experience is that people on the working floor, they already have so many demands and wishes and opportunities and challenges. They really are, what you like excited to get started with it. So for me, most of the time, it's not a hard part to convince them. It's sometimes more hard to convince upper leadership, because they might not be aware of the opportunities of data and AI. They don't face the struggles and the challenges the people on the work floor have. They're a bit farther away from everything. So sometimes you really need to make it super tangible for them in order to understand the importance of it.
Yeah, I agree. So I don't think we have any other questions right now. So 2 last messages before we finish this webinar. So first, that's the second webinar in our series. So in the future, we're going to talk about more exciting topics, like, for example, BI, self-service BI, how to model data in this modern paradigm of a data lakehouse, and other episodes. So we encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn and to stay in touch with this initiative. And also, I encourage you to leave feedback. So in chat, you can find the survey, and actually leaving some feedback is very valuable to us, especially if you can write down some comments about what you like, what you would like to hear more about, because the numbers are nice that you see that people like or didn't like the event. But even more important is the directions that like direct comments about what we can improve and how we can evolve this series in the future along with you. So I would really appreciate if you could spend 2 or 3 minutes and fill in this survey. And finally, thank you, Steven, for taking part in this event. I really enjoyed that. So yeah, as always, talking to you is very, very exciting. I learn a lot. So hope that we will do some initiatives in the future.
Thanks, Peter. That's mutual.
Yeah,
it's great to join.
By the way, there's another question in chat, so maybe you can take a look.
Yep. Yeah, so the question is if Microsoft is working on integrating OpenAI models in all of their products, do companies really need to think about the data strategy? Microsoft promises document summarization and Q&A on documents, etc. So interesting question. I think, first of all, Microsoft is probably not in, OpenAI is from Microsoft, I believe, right? So they are probably indeed adding those models to all of their products. I think this is just one application of how these large language models can be used in Office tools like Word and PowerPoint and etc. Can you imagine that you write a document in Word? You don't like a certain alinea that you wrote, or you probably will not even write it, right? You will prompt it. You'll get some alineas, but you might not like the tone of voice, so you just right-click and say, please make this alinea a little bit more warmer, or make it more concise, or elaborate a little bit more, and new text is generated. So we're probably more like prompting and editing rather than writing anything ourselves anymore. But I think this is just an office application, right? It does not touch how you're going to deal with data and AI as a competitive gain for your organization, because every company will have this at their fingertips. So you're not going to have any competitive advantage from it. So a data strategy is about how can you use data and AI in your core business of your organization to make this competitive difference. And that's not going to be a Microsoft Office use case, because everybody has that. What do you think, Piotr, if you read the question and think about it?
Yeah, I agree. As you said, like, that's the tool that will help you in some use cases, but it will not tell you how do you optimize your metrics, for example. As you said previously, that is a proprietary data that you will not want to enter everywhere. So you might need some custom technologies. And also we have seen that happening, that even though data technologies become more and more available, like for example, data warehouses or data lakes are available in cloud, you still need people who will help you to use them, who will, you need to still like deploy them. You need to like make sure that your data processes are working on top of them. So I would say that this is one more tool that you have for your disposal, but you still need to have a plan on how you will use it.
Completely agree. Okay, so that's it then.
Okay, there's no more question, I think. So Piotr, Steven, thank you so much for the presentation. It was really, really great. And all of you who attend this webinar, thank you so much for joining us and putting some interesting questions in the chat. And see you on the next webinar in the series.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Piotr.
See you. Bye-bye.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.